Hello everyone, my name is Josef Holm. I'm the founder of Krowdster, and this is the Crowdfunding Masterclass. I'm very happy today to welcome our esteemed panelists, Alon Goren. He is the founder of Invested In and also the co-founder of the Crowd Invest Summit, as well as Baird, who is the founder of Crack the Crowd, a crowdfunding agency. I welcome all of our viewers today. We have a lot going on here in the Q&A already. That's very cool. We also have a pretty long list of questions that you guys have submitted before this webinar. Thank you very much. And I think since this is all about answering your guys' questions, I will hand it over to the panelists real quick to introduce themselves. And then I think we should just start with the first questions. Hey, Alon.
Hey Joseph, thank you for having me. Hi guys, like Joseph said, I'm one of the founders of Invested In. So we powered the technology for a bunch of crowdfunding sites, actual platforms, not just individual campaigns. So I've pretty much seen it all. So feel free to shoot questions all over the map to me, and we'll make it happen. And of course, Joseph mentioned the Crowd Invest Summit. In December, we're going to be holding the largest equity crowdfunding focused event probably ever. So check that out when you have some time. Let's get to it.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for joining us. Hey Dain, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Joseph. Appreciate it. Thanks for the time, everybody. As Joseph mentioned, my name is Dan Baird. I'm the founder of Crack the Crowd. And as you mentioned, we're a marketing agency, and we also do serve, not just necessarily campaigns, but a lot of platforms as well. We get access to a lot of kind of the, if you want to call it the macro, the high-level data, as far as how series of campaigns or category levels of campaigns perform. And we build a lot of kind of, we really try to focus on what we call here bigger, fewer, better, which oftentimes mean let's work on those campaigns that are first. Either they're really large or they're really challenging for one reason or another, and for that reason we get to get into some pretty fun and challenging and complex questions regarding crowdfunding. But yeah, happy to be here, happy to jump in, and just like Alon mentioned, we do the same thing. We've been in and done rewards, donations campaigns, Title II equity campaigns, and even right now we're working on some Reg CF tools, which is like the most recent kind of equity crowdfunding campaigns to see and basically start to map out what works and what does not work in that space. So, ask away.
Awesome, awesome. I'm really happy to have you guys here. That's really cool. Before we get started, everyone, there is a Q&A box to the right of your screen. You can post all of your questions here. We'll go through as many as we can. Let me start with a few of the questions that some people have submitted before the webinar. Question number one is from Yuri Obst, and he is keen to understand the success rate and the value of projects pitched for commercially equity versus those pitched for eco-social gain, so non-equity kind of donation campaigns. And he wants to know what's the campaign style and promotional lead times that have worked the best so far. Maybe we'll put this one to you, Dan?
Sure. Okay, a couple things, so let me unpack this. So as far as the success rates, you're going to see, and this question is difficult for a couple different reasons. You're going to see different success rates based on, obviously, the type of raise that they're doing. In a reward campaign, there's very little kind of regulations and things associated with those campaigns. You can try a lot more things to see, as far as marketing, you don't really need to worry too much about what you say from a legal standpoint. You obviously need to be really careful about not misleading anyone for just good marketing purposes and just kind of good behavior, so to speak. But you'll see success rates, they'll decline a little bit in general just because of the nature of the raise. Rewards campaigns have been legal, since crowdfunding was legal. Donation campaigns, the same thing. Equity campaigns, from a Title II perspective, if you are familiar with those, kind of the accredited investor, these are the small groups, the institutional players that need to raise more than, or need to have more than $250,000 worth of income, or they need to be acting on behalf of, say, a family investment office. They'll go down a little bit because there's less data there. There's less kind of bright line standards for what's worked. As I mentioned earlier, Reg CF, that legislation only went live in mid-May. There's only a total of about 53-ish campaigns that are actually even live right now that have used that regulation. And they haven't, most of those haven't even closed yet. So your rates go down a little bit, but I wouldn't necessarily focus on that as far as a, hey, which one should I choose? It's really important to note that if you can pull off a rewards-based campaign, that's the equivalent of pre-sales revenue. On your balance sheet and everything else, that's booked revenue. There is no dilution whatsoever. No one takes a part of your company. When you get into equity, it's often easier to raise much larger amounts of capital, but again, you start converting these into a debt instrument or an equity instrument. You start getting more people, or maybe a platform's special purpose vehicle on your cap table. And so there's just kind of different reasons. If you can do a rewards campaign and actually hit the target that you want, in terms of value for your money, I would go that route. You own 100% of the stock in the entity when it's all said and done. But you'll have some limitations. It's much more rare to do a really significant raise using rewards as opposed to equity. It's easier to get past the 6- and 7-figure marks. In terms of lead times are most effective in both cases. I probably speak for everyone on this kind of panel when I say more is better. The longer you wait, the worse it gets. If you could give me a year, I would absolutely take a year. If you show up 10 days before your campaign, I'm going to have a conversation where I go, this is going to be way more expensive than you want it to be. There's kind of a little joke in the industry of there's good, there's fast, and there's cheap. You can pick two, but you almost never get all three. So pick two.
That's a very good answer. Thank you. Alon, do you want to add anything to that, or should we move on to the next one?
No, I think exactly what Dan was saying. The longer you prepare and the more you prepare, the easier things get. There's a million adages of people saying like it took 3 years for that person to become an overnight success. It's the more you prepare, the more you promote, and you really especially line things up and get things ready, the better you're going to be. You have to stack the deck every way you look at it, and that means pretty much working before you start working.
Very good, very good. Let's move on to the next question. This is one of the questions that was just posted now by Tom Myers. He is thinking of launching a Kickstarter around September, October, and he wanted to know whether it's a good idea to start promoting that fact and to begin getting a following on social media now, so that when he does launch, he already has an audience, rather than scrambling to get one with a 20-day period. Any tips? So yes, of course. I think we all agree that you should start marketing your campaign as soon as possible. The sooner the better, really. There isn't too much time, really, in preparing your crowdfunding campaign. But Alon, do you want to talk to that a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's various ways to look at it. There's one way to obviously look at it from the high level of like, yes, of course, start preparing now, start preparing yesterday, and get it going. I've found a good way to start is to actually hang out with the folks in the industry that you're going after. So something I've promoted to people in the past is to sort of hijack crowds of other people if you can. So if there's a group, let's say you're a filmmaker and you want to hang out, you want to launch a campaign for a short film that you're doing, start hanging out with other filmmakers. And that doesn't mean physically, well, it can mean physically, but it also means online. There's a million groups online for filmmakers on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever there are people like that. Start engaging and start getting friends in that area. Then the next step, obviously, is start creating content that makes you an expert in that field, so that you can, when other films and filmmakers start going out there to raise money, they might come to you to ask for advice. Or when there is, if you are doing any type of campaign, you'll be sort of known as an authority in the space. And the social media part that you mentioned in the question is absolutely correct. You should have a following. You should use tools like Krowdster to reach out and follow the specific people that you want to have following you, and start engaging with them. Don't passively do it, but engage with these people. And the more you do that, the more juice you'll have when your campaign goes live. And of course, like I was saying before, you have to stack the deck. So the day the campaign goes live, you need to know that you have people there that are going to be following your campaign and going to be contributing to your campaign. You want to know your mom, your sister, your brother, your best friend, and any of your followers online are going to be contributing and looking at that campaign. And know when you flip that switch that first day, before you share it with anybody else, that your friends and family and your close network of people are contributing to that campaign. Get commitments in advance. That's the hugest part of the preparation, in my opinion.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I see this with Krowdster every day. I see clients come to me and say, "Oh, we've just launched our campaign, and what can we do on Twitter?" And it's usually too late to do something after the campaign has been launched, and that's why we also recommend that people start at least 90 days before the launch of a campaign to build their social media audience, because you can't just go and tweet at people and send them a link and spam them essentially and ask them to go support your campaign. You really have to build rapport with these people. You have to get to know them, and they have to get to know you in order for this to work properly. Dan, did you want to add something to this, or should we move on to the next one?
I'd echo, Alon had everything there correct. The only slight potential tweak I would make to what he said was that I think there absolutely is a good order of operations to do this. He mentioned kind of the friends and family. You have what social capital, kind of the joke, kind of the jargon word, but essentially you can go to your friends and your family. They know you well. They know you're willing to pull that. You're willing and capable of pulling this off. You should be able to get commitments from them. And if you can't get commitments from them, your campaign's probably busted from day one. Once you secure those commitments, you use that, kind of call this social validation, where you can now use the initial backings, and you can use all of the clout that you've gotten from those friends, those families, and those really early kind of peer sets, people that are very much in the space. You use that to go talk to those reporters and those industry contacts. They're going to be looking for some sort of validation that they're not wasting your time on them. There's a kind of a Kickstarter fatigue, if you will, that's going around. A lot of journalists and reporters are getting hit up by campaigns. They've been burnt before by talking about what was supposed to be the next big thing a while ago. So they're much more careful about what they cover now. So you need to show up with them not only with a good product, but some sort of validation, be it a testimonial, or we've already got interest in, or we've already got orders from these larger companies. If you bring that data to the conversation with those kind of people that can help get your message out, these are the journalists, this is PR, this is those bloggers and influencers. When you go live, it's the combination of those two, the fact that when someone shows up to your campaign that you already have that initial bump. Most people say you need 20% of your entire campaign in about the first few days. You need that there, and then you need the testimonials and the backings and the as seen in for the real mass adoption from the real quote-unquote crowd to participate. So anyways, there's a little bit of an order to it.
Yeah, very cool, very good, thank you. That's very informative. That also kind of ties into the next question, which was submitted by Neer, and he wants to know, this is a pre-submitted question, he wants to know what are the 5 key features to a successful equity crowdfunding campaign? Boy, that's a loaded question, so I'm going to kick the ball right back to you, Dan, because that's your specialty right there.
Sure. Number one, same thing applies. In equity campaigns, it's planning not only to line up your tools and your assets, but you have to be much more careful about what you say. There's a thing called forward-looking statements, where if you use copy and if you use marketing language that starts to imply that you're guaranteeing or you're endorsing some sort of a return where you can get in trouble. Reg CF, which is the brand new kind of, the mid-May regulation that went live, kind of true crowdfunding that's now legal in the United States, has some really difficult parameters about what you can and cannot say in your marketing messages. So having that compliance lined up is a very, very challenging and a big deal. You need to know those, and it's been a big enough problem that some of my team members are starting to build marketing packages just to help people with that kind of a challenge. So compliance, planning, part 2, with basically everything that we've said thus far, making sure that everything is in order, ducks are in a row with what you can and cannot say. Number 3 is your target audience. So when it really comes down to it, crowdfunding is still marketing, and marketing, despite what most people think, is very much about numbers. You need to drive enough eyeballs to your campaign to get the conversions that you need to get the correct amount of backers or investors. I see a lot of equity campaigns that really fail to do the math on, do we have a large enough population in the first place? Do we have enough people that are more than likely to invest in independently throw money into some sort of a campaign, and then on top of that, are they large enough? Meaning, is there large enough numbers, or is there a small population that invests large enough amounts individually that we can hit their target? It's really common for equity campaigns to go out and basically do a raise before they actually do that math on, well, do we know how many people we need to actually convert, and where are they? What are they doing? Do we have access to the kind of channels and the mediums that they're engaging in to get our message out and to let them know that, hey, we actually have this offering available. And then for spend, ad spend. The biggest myth in crowdfunding is that it's free money. I don't know who started that lie, but it's not free. It's either sweat equity and you're working your ass off, or you are spending. You're going to do paid promotional campaigns, paid outreach to influencers, paid agency work. You're paying other people that have relationships, or you've built them over a very long period of time to date. And there's way too many campaigns, both rewards, equity, and otherwise, that jump in thinking that, oh, I'll build it and they will come. I'll put up a page and magically all these people will come flooding to me. It just doesn't happen. You have to work your butt off. And that's before the campaign, and that's during the campaign as well. It takes a lot of resources to get one of these things out. And you've got to have your kind of finger on the pulse of the crowd. That's only 4, but I'm pretty comfortable with that 4 being significant. How about that?
Those are very, very significant points indeed. Thanks, Nir. That was a really good question. And I guess we all agree that this basically is true for equity and rewards campaigns for the most part, other than the legal requirements and restrictions that you're dealing with in an equity raise. At the end of the day, it's all, like you said, it's all online marketing. It's all about numbers and driving traffic. It doesn't work to simply launch a campaign on Kickstarter or one of the equity platforms and hope for the best in the case. Our next question was just posted before by David Rodwin, and this is a really interesting question. So he says, if you're doing a campaign and you're confident that you'll raise over 50 grand, he's got 500 contributors lined up to back on day 1, and it's an artistic project, a film, and he wants to know, is there any good reason to build your own crowdfunding campaign rather than launching it on Kickstarter and giving them all the money, considering that 90% of your backers come from your direct contact or marketing efforts? That's a really good question, Alon.
I will. I've got a few thoughts on that. If you believe your campaign, it has an appeal outside of your audience, so when people see how many people in your own audience contribute to it, if you believe that will drive more to kind of find it and look for it, then use another site. Use Kickstarter. Use Indiegogo. And my reasoning for that is this campaign solely about money, or is it also about marketing and eyeballs and getting more people to watch your artistic endeavor, right? Like I've been involved with a ton of musicians and bands and things like that, and they care a lot more at the independent stage about getting people to listen to their music than they do about the actual money. They want the money because it covers their costs, but it's almost secondary to the fact that if they're on a site like Kickstarter, they're going to get, maybe 100 people to check them out for every 1 person that contributes. Dan or Joseph might have better stats for something like that. I'm just kind of off the cuff. But so there's those reasons to be on a site like that. If you really believe you're doing something crazy and artistic that nobody in the mainstream would be interested in, and you want to save 10% of your money and do it yourself, or maybe not 10%, then by all means do it. But you have to remember that doing it yourself isn't necessarily free either. Do you want to be spending your time marketing your product, or do you want to be worrying about the fact that some guy in Utah just shot you a message saying that, are you sure that the SSL certificate on your website is correct, because I clicked on this thing and I'm not sure I should be putting this in there. Do you have a PayPal account I can send money to instead of the Stripe account you decide to use? Because I don't trust Stripe. You're going to be dealing with this extra customer support element. You're going to be dealing with your even the most simple products like Tilt or WordPress. There is effort that's going to go into it. So do you want to spend time, or do you want to spend money? That's my thought. And I think there is a value to a Kickstarters and Indiegogos, obviously, that is worth spending that money. And in certain situations, it's absolutely not worth spending the money. But in most situations, it really is. When you know you have a bunch of people to contribute, you know that it's going to potentially amplify what you can get out of Kickstarter. If you don't know that you're going to have 50K in contributions, Kickstarter probably won't add any value. So you've just got to think of it from that perspective. I bet Dan and Josef have a perspective as well on this, because it's something that tons of people ask. And I even saw, I was going down the questions, I saw 2 or 3 people ask, should I launch first on Indiegogo or Kickstarter? Should I, which platform should I use? So we could probably expand on this also.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. What's your thought on this, Ben?
I'd echo a lot of what Alon has said. I've had, one of the first gigs that I had in crowdfunding was kind of doing the business development for a company that built software as a service platforms. If you wanted to compete with Kickstarter, if you wanted to compete with Indiegogo, they sold those platforms and they allowed you to do it. And oftentimes when people came to me with rewards-based concepts and they were saying, hey, I'd like to build a platform, oftentimes after I did the math on, that handful of percentage points is a lot less money than you'd think. To run a platform, I'm going, you have $5 million worth of deal flow right out the gate, right? Because, this is going to be at least a few people's full-time job. And to Alon's point, there's customer service, there's technical and bugs and things that come up when you run a technology platform. And it becomes a pain in the butt. Now, that being said, to see if we can hit a couple of the other questions regarding like what platform do you choose. The platform, if I'm going to list on someone else's platform, I want them to give me a very good reason why they are the best platform to list with. Meaning, they should be saying, hey, we will do X, Y, and Z for you in terms of marketing. We'll put you in the newsletter. We'll make sure you're featured, or we'll give you the PR support. There are teams at, say, Indiegogo that are actually built there. You hit a handful of performance metrics, and they'll go and list you. We worked with the Child Rescue Association a while ago, and Indiegogo was nice enough to kind of put us in their newsletters, to tweet us, and do. They've got 250,000 followers and stuff, and help the campaign. They give pretty good analytics at Indiegogo as well, just so you guys know. Like, they actually give you a lot of kind of JavaScript and the ability to retarget and do a handful of other things that really give you some good insights about where your traffic's coming from. All stuff that you oftentimes will have to build. Tilt and that stuff is good. It's cheaper, but a lot of the times when they have to build so many different kind of separate widgets, some of the functionality is lacking a little bit. Because they have to just basically accommodate a larger kind of swath of the population that's trying to manage their own campaigns. In general, what I see is if you really think you're going to be doing, 50 to 100 grand is probably the cutoff. When it's above that, you start saying, well, I'm going to own all of the data, all of the retargeting metrics. I can really control the experience. At that point, if you know that much is baked in, building your own kind of custom platform starts to make more sense. If it's less than that, you might get a little bit extra aggregate traffic from the Indiegogo campaigns or the Indiegogo platform and site browsers that makes them a little bit more worthwhile. And if you see the trends, like some of the really big raises that are coming out, they're a little bit more likely to kind of build their own platform because they can really customize the experience. But yeah, for my money, if I wasn't doing and knew I had about a $50,000 raise in the bank, or I was a known brand that had already done a couple raises successfully in the past, or proven that I had launched a product successfully in the past, then I'd start kind of building my own technology, but not until then.
Right. Because at the end of the day, if you do the math, if you're about to raise 50 grand, Kickstarter's fee is 5%, so you're looking at $2,500, and you can't build a nice platform for $2,500. So I would rather take that money and apply it towards marketing, ad spend, and still launch it on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, and I think you'll get more bang for your buck. But like Dan said, if it's more than that, then it may be worth looking into. Sorry, Alon, I cut you off before.
Oh, so I was just going to jump on top of the platform thing. So just one random example is a company called Tracker. They're based in Santa Barbara. They make those things that you track your keys in your wallet, and they've had a bunch of different products. And they raised money on Indiegogo, on Kickstarter, and then back on Indiegogo again. And they also have their own, I think, Tilt, Crowd Tilt thing. That's the free version that is their own version, because they did some creative things separately where they retarget people, where they do special promotions and stuff on an ongoing basis. So they kind of found a way to take their, sort of hijack their followers on Indiegogo, send them to their own site to buy new products and do things like that, but they still, every once in a while, like every year or so, they do another Indiegogo campaign because they just know the value in that. And even though they've raised millions of dollars, they already have millions of followers and fans and people, and they spend a bunch of money on advertising, they still decided to use Indiegogo for it because they've found how to work the system and do it right. So you could, at a certain point, do both so that you get, the better analytics, the better conversions, and the things like that when it's just your own product. But maybe the SEO you might get for future by doing your own campaign, but in general, I think what Dan's saying is, and Joseph's saying is exactly it.
Cool, thanks. The next question is from Stefano Russo, and he wants to know what is or what are the best communication channels to spread the campaign aiming at getting backers. So I have to plug in our backer directory right here before I pass it on to the panelists. Krowdster actually does have the world's largest backer directory. We have over 2.2 million previous crowdfunding supporters on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. You can go in there and filter it not just by platform, but also by category. And, which makes it very interesting, you can actually sort it by the number of campaigns that these people have backed. So you can literally go in there and say, I only want to connect with people who have backed at least 10 or 20 or 50 campaigns. And it will then give you a list of names and social media contacts that you can build a relationship with these people and pitch your campaign to them. What else is out there? Alon?
What's funny is there's sort of doing the footwork yourself, right? Like somebody asked on the questions I was going through it, are there any no money campaign marketing hacks? And there's a ton, but most of them just involve you working your butt off. There's no way you're going to, there's no way in hell you're going to find every single Kickstarter backer in the technology category that has contributed to more than 50 campaigns in Los Angeles, unless you're using a product like Krowdster. I literally used that exact example to show somebody Krowdster this morning. Because the funny thing is I've been hearing about it for years and years and years, and I finally, not too long ago, started using Krowdster myself just for social media, just for awareness and helping my own stuff out. And I literally, since then, have sat down with people multiple times and went, what are you doing? You're doing, let's talk about the last guy. You're a filmmaker. You're doing this specific type of project. This is the sweet spot. You already know you have a certain number of followers that are going to come after you. Let's find those new followers. Let's tell those followers, let's find every person who's ever contributed to an Indiegogo campaign in the film category where it's more than 10 contributions, which means they're obviously not just contributing to their friends, they're contributing to other people. And then go, well, now I've realized there's 50,000 of those people, right? I'm just throwing out numbers. Now let's now drill that down, because I only want people that live in Texas. And so there's 500 people in Texas that I know have contributed to an Indiegogo, more than 10 Indiegogo campaigns in my specific category. Now I can automate the reaching out to them and the social media strategy around them. And that's where Krowdster is huge. And I haven't found anything that works similarly. There's automated stuff where you can follow people that tweet about certain categories, but this is really following the specific people, and that's where I haven't found anything comparable. And it's not just to kiss Joseph's butt. It's really I haven't found anything comparable. Dan.
Sure.
Awesome, Dan. What's your take on this? What are the best communication channels in your view?
Sure. To jump back to the comment I made earlier about there's kind of like an order of operations in terms of getting people that are friends and family and your peer sets involved. In terms of channels that have the highest conversion, so I'm talking, let's go a little bit broader, tool-wise. First and foremost, the highest conversion rate you're ever going to get is going to be a face-to-face interaction, and that's going to be with people that you know directly. So if you can get in and, again, start talking to people that you're already dealing with very much, either you're doing meetups or something else, getting, seeing if you can plug your project prior to going live. It's almost free, and its conversion rates are probably going to be as high as it gets. Next is going to be phone, right? So you're not going to do as many of them because obviously your efforts can't scale as much, but it's much more likely if you're saying, hey, I'm in the planning stages, I need to get your commitment, whether you can either back or invest, or even on top of that. If you can't do either, just share it for me the day it launches to help me get the word out. Likelihood of a phone call getting that versus any other channel is still very high. From there, personal emails, non-branded, standard text. If you want a little tool for that, that Eli Regalato introduced me to, MinMax is a pretty cool tool that does some kind of automated, some templates. It can really streamline the personal outreach that you do to people that you already know. This is people that you absolutely know. From there, you start getting into marketing emails that you're going to use, and this is MailChimp, and the trick is getting the right nurturing campaigns to make sure that people know, say your existing customer base, making sure that they know about it. Email is one of the cheapest ways that any marketer is going to get your word out, right? If they'll, sometimes before a campaign, you can suggest that we hold a contest. We make sure that we offer something that's really relevant to our campaign as kind of a sweepstakes type of offer. We get a bunch of emails that way, but to send an email out to 20,000 versus 1,000 people is virtually the same price. And emails have usually pretty high conversion rates. You'll get at least 20% open rates and then single-digit click rates, if not higher, after that. Once you get past that, that's when I start thinking about social, because you have a baked-in audience, and that's where you have the opportunity. But it's much more passive. They may get the impression, but it's for example, Twitter. Your tweet is side by side with 6 or 7 other tweets at the exact same time. So there's a lot of fighting for attention that you start to do on social media platforms, and again, the conversion rates go down. But at the very least, to post things organically to your existing audience, pretty much free. So stuff like Hootsuite, Krowdster has a tool that does that with Twitter that's pretty cool, and that works. And then above that, that's when you get into the PPC campaign. So Facebook is less expensive per visit than, say, a standard AdWords campaign will be. But oftentimes those AdWords campaigns are with people that are very much ready to buy, ready to back, ready to invest. So they have a little bit more urgency, and oftentimes they don't need as much explanation on what the product is. But if I was to put them in chronological order, that would be mine.
Really cool. Yeah, I don't think anybody can ever talk down email, right? Email is by far the most valuable bang for your buck, because, for example, people don't realize that you can, in a second, export every single contact you have on LinkedIn, right? So talking about preparing in advance, if you start following people and interacting with people in your industry or that in an industry that would potentially contribute to your campaigns, you can, in 30 seconds, go to your followers on LinkedIn and export them, drop them into MailChimp, and send 1,000 people an email in a minute. Or if you have 50,000 people you're connected with, you could do that. Not all of us are as well connected as Joseph, but
Hey, it took a lot of work, man. Let me tell you that. It's human capital. The next 2 questions, I actually want to combine the 2 to save a little time. Kunal and Mark submitted very similar questions. Mark wants to know, how would you persuade people to donate to several crowdfunding campaigns? And Kunal says, hey, what should I launch first, Kickstarter or Indiegogo? And that's a question I think we all get oftentimes, people thinking that it's a smart idea to launch a campaign first in Kickstarter and then on Indiegogo. Dan, what's your take on this?
As far as Kickstarter versus Indiegogo, I'd choose Kickstarter only in the situation that I was doing something like wearable technology or a gadget. For the most part, in my opinion, for all of the customer service and the other resources and the analytics that Indiegogo will offer me, I usually prefer Indiegogo versus Kickstarter.
So that's very interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can you elaborate a little bit on why?
So if you go to the back end of your campaign on Indiegogo, it'll oftentimes give you tools to provide polls. It will let you know the sources of traffic. It'll let you drop Google Analytics in, and they've got a decent dashboard that kind of tracks your aggregate raise over time, and how much did you raise today versus others. I've had clients in the past, so this is anecdotal, but I've had a lot of clients and talked to a lot of people that have done Kickstarter raises in the past where they said, look, we just, we helped and we surpassed six-figure rate. When it came back and we needed some help from Kickstarter to ask them a question or to basically get some customer support help, they wouldn't even pick up the phone. It's anecdotal, but I've had more than a few people that weren't really satisfied with the tools that Kickstarter provided them. Now, Kickstarter is really built in and has really high brand equity and recall when it comes to Kickstarter, like kickstarted startup and technologically advanced, cooler style products. They're kind of focused and they own that niche. Indiegogo, because its market share is so much lower than Kickstarter's, and it came to the game a little bit later, it kind of basically had to say, well, Kickstarter's going to kill it with that specific niche. We need to go to donations, and we need to expand our footprint to different categories. And that was the strategy that they took to kind of compete, and they tried to do, different customer service. Kickstarter was the first to the game, and for that reason, they're probably going to retain that spot and that title. And at least thus far, they're basically just going to really do it focusing on that startup space. Indiegogo, in my experience, because they're in second place, has to try harder, and that works ultimately on behalf of the issuer or the campaign creator. So.
But in terms of now running two consecutive campaigns, one on Kickstarter or one on Indiegogo first, and one on Kickstarter, what's up with that?
I can dive in on that. Because I was coming around crowdfunding before the word crowdfunding was really there. It was like social fundraising and all that stuff. A lot of people were still under the assumption, they thought of it sort of like a profile on the internet, right? So yeah, I've got Facebook. I've also got Twitter. I've also got MySpace. I've also got LinkedIn. I've also got this and that, whatever. And I've got my homepage for my website. They thought of it that way, so they went, oh, there's a thing called Kickstarter. There's also a thing called Indiegogo. There's also a thing called Rocket Hub. I'm just going to put a campaign on all of them, and maybe I'll raise $5,000 on one, $1,000 on the other. And really, it's counterintuitive, and it's counterproductive to what you want. You want, just like we're talking about increasing conversion rates, there's a million ways to get to people via email, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of those channels. But you want to drive them all to one single place, and you want to then focus on that one place and make sure that it works for you the best way you possibly can. So if it's Kickstarter, it's Kickstarter. If it's Indiegogo, it's Indiegogo. But you want to make sure that all of your traffic goes there, because the one thing I always tell people at these crowdfunding events and things that we do together is that nothing attracts a crowd more than a crowd. So if I go to Dan's campaign and I see 1,000 supporters at that campaign, I go, holy crap, Dan has 1,000 people looking at what he's selling and they love him, and I either should follow those 1,000 people because it's cool, or what are they seeing? I want to see what they're seeing. Just like when you pass by an accident and there's a million people looking, you start looking, right? It's just a natural human reaction. So if you split that up between various places, you won't actually realize that stuff is going on. And so it's actually very important to drive everyone in the same place for that reason, and a million others. You shouldn't be splitting your focus and your time on maintaining a bunch of sites. You create a new video, you shouldn't have to post it in 4 places. You post it one place and then drive all of the traffic to that one place, and make sure you do it right. And that's really, in my opinion, the best way to do it. I've never seen somebody successfully do a campaign to the level that they could have, trying to do it in multiple places. Like there's some people that go, I know, I'm going to do it on Kickstarter because they have a website with a lot of people that use it in the community, but I'm also going to do it on my own website because I'm going to save 5%. And that never actually pans out to helping whatsoever. You're only shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, I second that completely, and I think the whole idea comes from the thought that all you need to do is launch a campaign on a platform, and then people will come and contribute to it, and on the more platforms you're on, the more contributions you'll get. But in reality, you're really just spreading yourself and your marketing efforts too thin, and like Alon said, it's much better to send them all to one page and have one campaign, and also not having to tap into your friends and family and first level peers more than once, especially if it's the same campaign. One question here, real quick, from Kyle. He wants to know if this webinar is being recorded. It is, and you can get a copy of it. You can watch it later on our YouTube channel. I will post a link to it on the webinar page on crowdster.co/webinar. Thanks for that question, Kyle. Eric wants to know, most crowdfunding campaigns, and this is actually an interesting one, most crowdfunding campaigns peak at the beginning and at the end, creating a U-shaped graph. And he wants to know, how do we alter it and make it, give it some upward spike in the middle, maybe make it a W-shaped kind of graph. Dan, how do you prepare or prevent this slowdown in the middle of a campaign happening?
You create your own news. So, person's absolutely right. So anyone that's listening in that isn't kind of familiar with this concept, the campaigns really tend to do really well in the first week. They get a ton of their kind of contributions, and again, there's that big lull in the middle where oftentimes there isn't enough news and there isn't enough momentum, and then right before the campaign ends, for whatever reason, this big spike shows up. That spike at the end is usually because people procrastinate. When people procrastinate, there's actually a weird little phenomenon where your brain shoots adrenaline into your prefrontal lobe when you're about to be late for something, but it allows you to actually think clearly. This is why, like, ADHD people use Adderall and stuff. It shoots that energy. It basically recreates that phenomenon. To increase the spike in the middle, you have to generate news. So the first week comes out, oftentimes, like in a rewards campaign, people will come and they'll say, hey, how much should we actually raise for our campaign? We need... we absolutely need. Every time someone comes to ask me how much they should raise, I say, how much would you do this for? What's your walkaway raise? If you don't raise, say, 10 grand, would you still do this? If they say yes, I go, would you do it for 9? Would you do it for 8? Would you do it for 7? I go all the way down to figure out what their walkaway raise price was. And in almost every case, I'll tell them to list their target for their walkaway price, because in that first week, say you need 50, as your walkaway, and you know that you can actually raise 50 as your walkaway, I'd say, cool, put it at 50. Don't put it at 100. Put it at 50, and when you successfully hit that target, I've already got a press release written for you that basically says, holy crap, we successfully hit $50,000. This is amazing. This thing is blowing up. Everybody share this, because clearly this is something that absolutely kicks ass. You're generating and kind of making your own news, and this is where all of that planning that we do prior to a campaign helps, because we can plan for press events such as that, and we can kind of bake those into the campaign. To throw a party in the middle of your campaign, to basically, as I mentioned earlier, face-to-face interactions are one of the best, highest converting, and most useful channels you can use to get your campaign message out. So throw a party in the middle of your campaign raise, invite a bunch of people to it that may or may not have contributed, take some donations offline, or see if you can raise capital offline. Again, you can save yourself some capital. Invite press to that event. Let people actually demo your product. Let them get their hands on it. But you basically have to create another event. Another thing that a ton of people miss is ongoing updates in the middle of your campaign. So number one, you can continue, as people contribute to their campaign, they usually get notified that you're adding updates to your campaign copy. So you're actually building a little bit of kind of like a newsletter subscription with your campaign. So once a week, you should be telling everybody, give them a little short video. It doesn't have to take you more than an hour. But hey, here's what we did this week. We're doing great. We're having fun. Please, everybody, if you've already contributed, donate again. Share this message to your team. But we would hugely appreciate your support, and you create another little spike. If you're in the middle of your campaign, it's also a fantastic time to collect data from these backers. These are your customers. Ask them about, like, what color do you want the most? If we were to add a new feature, which of these 5 features would be the most interesting to you? These are all ways where you can keep that engagement level high and continue to kind of, again, turn the U into a W. But you got to create some news, and you got to do some contact, some more communication.
Very good, thanks. I have 2 questions here that kind of tie into the same underlying question. Paul is asking, what recommendations do you have regarding building out a campaign goal? And then Zach is asking, he said, you said that, set your goal at the walkaway price, but what about the concept of overfunding? And they kind of go hand in hand. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Alon?
Yeah, so Dan is saying first off, did you guys hear Dan advocate drug use in the last question? I'm pretty sure he did. I don't agree with that at all. I just want to be clear that I don't agree with that at all. I was messing with you. No, so Zach was asking okay, so you set it to the walk away, not because you want to walk, not that you think, okay, I'm going to hit that goal and I'm going to walk away. You're using that as an example, right? You're using that as this sort of not manufactured, but sort of manufactured press release and reason for people to talk about you. For the same reason why you're stacking the deck at the beginning and getting every single person you know to contribute on the first day before you share it, people want to contribute to a campaign. Writers want to write about a campaign that's exciting. They're not going to write about something that's a 0 out of 100,000, so you don't even bother sending it to them before the campaign goes up. If you do, you send it to them just as like, FYI, we're launching a campaign on Friday, you should check it out. And then Friday afternoon, you send them a message saying, holy crap, we already raised our goal. And that's exciting to them, and that's something worth writing about. They can't write about every campaign, no matter how exciting it is, because there's a bazillion campaigns out there. So you have to set yourself apart, and that's one of the reasons why you set the goal low, an attainable goal, so you hit it, now you have an announcement. Something else you can do with it is it helps create the extra urgency. Like Dan was saying, ask your followers or ask your contributors what colors that you should have, what new features, whatever. You can use that as a thing to go, wow, we hit our goal. We had to release a limited edition new version of something. Now you're creating this urgency and creating this churn and this excitedness in the whole thing. And you might get your contributors to contribute again. You might get them to post on Twitter saying, holy crap, I wish I would have waited a week. Now look at the product. And it's just getting this conversation. Or maybe you go, because we reach our goal so quickly, we're going to give all our contributors something special and extra, and if you contribute before Friday, you're going to get that too. And you create these reasons, and that's the reason to do it in advance. I've never seen it work against somebody like, oh, they already reached their goal, I guess I'm not going to contribute, because at the end of the day, most people don't contribute because they love Joseph or they love Dan and they want to contribute to their campaign. That's why your mom and your sister and your brother contribute, and your aunt and uncle and your cousin. But most people are contributing for selfish reasons. Let's be honest. They want the thing you're giving them. They want the product, they like it, and maybe there's a little more to it, but if they didn't like the product and they didn't want the remote control car you're sending them, they're not going to contribute whether or not it's, you know, this altruistic great feeling. I powered campaigns for Eva Longoria. I powered campaigns for Avril Lavigne. One of them was giving money to inner city schools. One of them was giving money to children's hospitals. The day that the campaigns finished giving away the products they were going to give, so for Avril Lavigne, it was like guitar picks and signed headshots. For Eva Longoria, it was headshots. The day we sold the 10,000 headshots were out the door, the money stopped coming in. This is money to children's hospital. This is money to inner city schools. Like, we thought, we were sitting there going like, is something broken? What happened? We still see tons of traffic coming to there, but because there's no signed headshots left for $10 a piece or for every contribution over $10, people stopped contributing. So you have to appeal to that, right? And so I know that it's a bit tangent, but you have to think like you're not going to shoot yourself in the foot by having a lower goal. You're only going to create a better story, right? And that's the reason to do it. And Joe just posted in the chat side of it that, you know, stretch goals work like a charm too. Absolutely. So then you get to go, you know what? We have a new goal. We hit $50,000, but if we hit a $10,000, you're going to get that new color. You're going to get that special feature. You're going to get, you know, a gold plated version of this thing, right? So that absolutely is something we shouldn't gloss over, and that's what Dan was alluding to, but more specifically, that's what people do, and that's why they do it.
Let me jump in to add to that one more thing to be aware of. I remember when crowdfunding doesn't have a ton of data. For everyone that's like on the call here, it's a new enough industry and a new enough phenomenon that there's people that are doing research studies and they're still really trying to figure stuff out. I remember when they they came out with some of the original data sets associated with how much does each category raise, and they found out that there were some categories that were really likely to overfund, and then there was other ones like film where the average successful raise would hit 104% of its target, and that was it. If you are in a category that involves digital distribution of media, like film, like an album, like something like that, be really cognizant of the fact that once you hit your target, if you do a low one, the incremental cost of production for another unit is $0. So there's a very good reason that a lot of those film campaigns and those music and those album-focused campaigns stop producing after they successfully hit their targets, and it's why it's really important to have stretch goals associated with those. It's not like you're going to make 2 movies. It's not like you're going to make 2 albums. So you have to say, hey, we'll give you the special edition cover, or we'll start giving everybody the special edition cover. Make sure you do have stretch and overfunding goals. I think every campaign should have those in mind before it starts. You don't necessarily publicize them, but you absolutely want those built in so you can not just hit your target but blow way past it and give people a good reason to contribute again, to share again, and to continue donating well past your initial target.
Very good. Thank you very much. I want to stay with you, Dan, because I know the next question is right up your alley, because you and Crack the Crowd, one thing you guys specialize in is paid advertising. And Sasha wants to know, assuming you have backers lined up day one to get 30% funded, what's the minimum amount as a percentage of the target you need to spend on paid marketing?
That's a great question, but it really changes. I mean, you want to find a scalable amount, right? So if you're doing a rewards-based campaign, if you haven't already built it into your kind of the P&L for your product, I usually say if you don't have one, you should assume that about 10% of the revenue for each of your products goes towards the marketing and sales of it. And in combination with your sales efforts, if you have to get on the phone to actually seal the deal and stuff like that, that's how you kind of allocate how much should we spend on our marketing budget, regardless of what channel you go through. So my best answer based on kind of that, it's pretty general, I know, but it's one of those things where you need to bake in a marketing budget for your product no matter what. If you don't have one already, if it's less than, anytime someone tells me that it's less than 5%, I go, are you sure it's only 5%? Which is why I say start with 10, because if it's more efficient than that, you just get to keep that money in your profit margin. And if you're budgeting for it, you're essentially setting yourself up for success. But you need to make sure that that budget is absolutely allocated in there. If you're doing those PPC campaigns, you should have a short time where you have to generate the traffic, generate your click-through rates and the cost per click, where you can start to say, all right, it costs us, X dollars per click to land on the page, and it took maybe 100, 200, however many visitors it took to actually convert into a sale. Now you have the ratio. If that cost per customer is less than 10% of the budget of your product, double down. I mean, if it's me, I'll tell you to spend all day doing that because it's scalable.
Yeah, Dan, what about, I was just going to throw in, do you see, I would assume there's a big difference in advertising budgets like that depending on the type of campaign, like a physical product versus, a filmmaker versus, I don't know, something else.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and equity too, right? So when you come in, for everyone listening, you'll spend your money in various different ways, right? If you're selecting a platform, for instance, Kickstarter may take 5% or whatever of your raise on top of the credit card fees, but to some extent, you're paying for the fact that they've already got, hopefully, your traffic on that platform. If someone's doing an equity campaign and they partner with an IPO, or they do an IPO, or they partner with a big, a BlackRock or others, those companies are going to take warrants and equity in the company. So you may not be paying out with a PPC budget, but you're still paying out with equity from your firm. The rates, they're usually, top end is usually 10, but I mean, you'll see in some investment banking scenarios after the warrants and the equity and everything else is built in that it's 20% of the raise. I've seen a bunch of agencies and other digital marketers and stuff like that where they'll take 35% of a rewards-based raise, and that's to build your copy, content, campaign, and provide the marketing budget for it. That sounds really expensive, but when you really think about, well, basically they're the sales and the general and the administration side of that campaign. If you go look at a company, usually about 25% of their overall revenue ends up making its way into SG&A. So when someone comes in and they say, hey, we're a marketing agency and we charge that much, and at your first, even my first response was, wait, that sounds really high. And then I thought about it and went, well, no, if they're doing your customer service, if they're answering questions, comments, generating emails, sending emails, and doing everything else, they're essentially taking over and kind of running your company for that short period of time. So
how does this work then? There is another question from Kunal. He wants to know whether hiring a PR firm is enough. And I just want to give your answer to that real quick. My first instinct is obviously to say no, but I'm sure you hear this a lot too. Is it enough to simply hire you guys and then you manage the campaign for me, or what's my involvement even if I have a marketing budget to hire a professional agency like Crack the Crowd?
Sure. We do digital marketing, and usually we're not necessarily an agency for everyone. We take specific campaigns, but to hire a PR firm is oftentimes very much worth the money if they have the relationships already. I mean, that's, in my opinion, the number one thing that you look for if you're hiring a PR firm is who do you already know, who's on speed dial, and who already answers your emails. Anyone can put out a press release, and in my opinion, you guys can correct me, but I think just putting out a press release is potentially one of the less effective ways you can actually reach. You don't get backlinks. A lot of people don't read those. I mean, you'll get some news, but the reality is that getting those contacts, like again, Krowdster has a tool where you can actually generate lists of journalists, but creating an individual one-on-one relationship with those people is going to be more effective than just blasting out a single press release in and of itself. Now, that being said, we still do that. I still recommend it. We'll still give people templates and things like that to do so. So in terms of spending on a PR firm, often not. I'm a branding and a product guy when it's all, that's like kind of my core training, if you will. So I think the best investment you can usually make into a product is into the product itself. If you have a crappy product, you can't polish a turd. Now, I can sprinkle glitter on a turd, and I can do a lot of things to make it more appealing, but when it's all said and done, if your product doesn't deliver, your product's not going to deliver. If your product over-delivers, that word of mouth is like 10x more effective than anything else you can do via paid marketing campaigns. So building in that surprise of, oh, wow, this is actually a very freaking cool product is one of the best ways you can totally spend your budget. And usually, for my money, if you aren't already hitting the, hey, this is a great product in the first place, just throwing a ton of money at it, it's kind of a bottleneck. You'll spend exponential larger amounts of dollars if the product under-delivers. So getting your copy and that type of stuff is good and is right. Yes, if you aren't already built in with kind of that team expertise, you don't already have some marketing or branding people on your team, or they haven't participated on your product at all, it's not easy. So when people say, oh yeah, I can do this, marketing is one of those weird skill sets where everyone can technically do it. Very few people do it really well. It's not easy at all. Anyone can learn Photoshop and pretend they're a graphic designer. Anyone with a camera is a photographer. But there is a huge difference between people that really understand what they're doing and people that just own the equipment. So
right. Which is why it really makes a lot of sense to hire an agency to help with that. And we see this here at Krowdster also all the time. We see crowdfunding agencies and consultants actually use our software for their clients and manage their campaigns for them. We have time for one last question that was posted yesterday on our website from Joe, and she wants to know, what's the best platform to promote your campaign, and do you need a big spending budget for the campaign? We kind of touched on this before, but just to wrap it up, what are your ideas about this, Alon?
I think where do you spend the most time on the internet? It's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google, right? That's where you spend the most time. If you're in a specific industry where those people spend more time on specific sites, then those are the places you go to. The budget really depends on you and what you're comfortable with and what you're doing. I think that a budget for advertising is similar to what we talked about with using something like Krowdster or using something like a PR agency. It's going to amplify the work that you do. So sort of the hidden gem in what Josef said earlier and what Dan said now is, is Krowdster going to replace running your business? Is a PR agency going to replace running your business? No, it's going to be a huge part of it, and it could definitely amplify what you do. At the end of the day, you have to think of this like you're running a business. If you opened a store on a corner, you wouldn't expect people to show up without telling people about it, right? So you have to do a ton of work to do it. And I know I keep going back to just working your butt off, but if you don't work your butt off, you're not going to get this done. The next step, obviously, is to work your butt off correctly, right? You have to be smart about it. You don't just work hard, you work smart. And the working smart is using automated tools like Krowdster and Hootsuite and all those different tools to do things like that. And then, of course, if you can afford it and if it makes sense to your campaign, you should be using an agency that has the relationships, like Dan was saying. So which platforms to use? It depends on you. For the most part, Facebook obviously is the best. Retargeting on Facebook is actually really, really cheap. I mean, compared to other places. If somebody goes to your website once, you can, I know for sure on Indiegogo, I'm not sure about Kickstarter, you can drop a pixel on them and retarget them. If you don't know what that means, find somebody like Dan or Josef that knows exactly how to deal with that kind of stuff, because what's going to happen is you now know this person went to your website. They're obviously more interested and knowledgeable about your product than any random person on the internet, right? So now you can retarget them. And even if you pay more for them to click back on your website, it's worth it, because when they see the advertisement on Facebook to your website, they already know what your website is. They already know what your product is. So if they're not interested, they're not going to click on it because they already know. So if they're going to click on it, it's because they're interested and they really want to do it. There's obviously ways to refine the message, but it's, using those types of tools are extremely valuable. I would start, of course, with Facebook, because that's probably where most of us spend most of our time, especially when you're talking about consumer stuff. Professional stuff, I'd go LinkedIn. It's just where we spend most of our time networking on the professional side. But you should look at your product and your unique situation and figure out, where do you hang out on the internet? If back in the day, if I spend all my time on Reddit because that's where all the Bitcoin people hang out, and I'm doing a product in the Bitcoin world, then I should be advertising to those people, or reaching those people, or have a strategy related to those people. It might not cost money, it might cost a lot of money, it might be somewhere in between. But you should have a strategy catered around your unique situation. And so I gave you a long-winded answer to say I have no answer.
That was awesome. That was a lot of really, really valuable information. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show today. I know you're very, very busy. Maybe tell our viewers real quick where and how they can reach you. If you enjoyed our webinar, please share it on social media. We're always happy to hear from you. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, you name it, we're everywhere. You can reach me at josefholm.com on Twitter, or joseph@crowdster.co via email. Dan and Alon, what's the best way to reach you guys?
Go ahead, Alon.
Okay, I just posted it in the chat, just alongoren.com, ALONGOREN.com. It has a link to everything.
And I'm at Whistlin on Twitter, WHISTLN. Dan Baird on LinkedIn. And if you want, go ahead up, Crack the Crowd on each of those platforms as well. Facebook, /Crack the Crowd, @Crack the Crowd on Twitter. And we'll be happy to get in touch. But thanks for the time, Josef. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for attending.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time. Bye. Good luck with your crowdfunding campaigns.